The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Emperor had brought the Sky Ripper pieces up out of ancient burial by his obscene rituals. Could this be where the Iblis stone was hidden? Someone better get it before he does, thought Renato. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? The island was windswept desert. No one went there except ostriches and ostrich hunters. The Iblis stone. It sounded ominous. It sounded powerful. If the Emperor was searching for it, it must be dangerous. And so, Renato went ostrich hunting. Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in the buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? You couldn't go sticking jewels in your gauntlet just anywhere. What if you dropped one and broke it? Luckily, there was a bench right here. Renato distrusted doors that opened automatically, especially after being buried for millennia. Was this some sort of trap? Frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Renato wondered what he could make with all this ore and essence. Oh, right. Probably a sword.
way better than being able to shrink down to the size of an ant. What was that all about, anyway?
To just stand on the device and let it do all the killing for him. But that wouldn't be sporting, would it? Or fun? Bernardo had been the terror of the sandcastles when he was 2. A road less traveled. This could be fun. If it wasn't fatal, that is. Bernardo at hot potato. Well, no sense collecting more materials. It was time to make something pointy. Fire? Yes, please. Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato.
It was like having a pet. Well, it was like having a goblet for a pet.
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders.
These platforms were great. Renato wanted one for his house.
This couldn't be good for global warming. It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. I can make you mighty. Who said that? Give me blood. It was the stone, eager, thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter, and I will make you Emperor. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once, and Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Skyripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. "It's the core," said the stone anxiously. The stone bothered him. He hated being told what to do. Wasn't that why he joined the rebellion? Wasn't that why he'd refused to be a soldier? He'd agreed to come on board only if he could freelance. The stone felt a bit clingy. The sage Calaveras had told him where to find the Sky Ripper, a weapon capable of challenging the gods. Even without its armature, the core would still possess great power. He would go there. The moment he landed the Farfarer, Reynardo had a rare feeling of regret. It's not too late, he thought. He could turn around and sail for Zenobia's island. He frowned. Wait a minute. He didn't want to kill Zenobia, did he? Sure, technically she was the enemy, but they'd been at Sword Fu school together. They'd never been lovers, but somehow they'd been closer. She'd told him every secret about herself, except the biggest one, that she was the Emperor's daughter. No, kill Zenobia, whispered the stone, before it's too late. There was something sour in the air. Like the earth had ruptured over something that had been fermenting for a very long time. Reynardo wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles. The mysterious sword from the east made you so fast you could catch a fly with your chopsticks. If that's what you really wanted. The stone hadn't lied about what it could do for him. With each raven he cut down, he felt a jolt of power flowing into his arm. "You're weak," whispered the stone. "The core will kill you." "Are you afraid of it?" Don't be ridiculous. It chuckled. But it's unstable. It will poison you so much as carry it, and if you try to use it, it will explode catastrophically. Reynardo did not trust rocks that talked in his head. He went onwards. When I build my castle, thought Renato, all my gates are going to open with buttons, and all the levers will drop rocks at your head. Renato felt that all the recent fighting had taught him something new, but he couldn't quite put his paw on it. Like having the world's deadliest bowman right by his side. As he approached the core, the stone became hysterical.
No, it's too much power. We've never rid all in space and time.
He had a sudden vision of plunging his gauntlet into the core and dying in anguish. That wasn't his vision, was it? The stone had sent him its darkest fears, hadn't it? He had a sudden impulse to do exactly that. He raised his right fist and plunged it into the core. There was a rush of light. He thought he could hear the stone screaming. And then he passed out. When Renato came to, the core was gone. But the Iblis stone was no longer black, but glowing with a blue light. And it was silent. "I can't hear you," he sang out, and "You?" It didn't answer. "Ha!" he said. He had defeated the demonic gem with the power of his mind. He felt invincible. It was time to attack the Imperial outpost on the Nexus. Take the battle to the enemy. But among the huge crystals, there was also an observatory. A wise man would probably ask the scientists exactly what he had first. How wise was he? As the Farfarer made its way toward the Nexus, Renato watched sparks fly out of the core. The Iblis stone sucked them in hungrily. You'd think the stone would want this kind of power, wouldn't it? Thought Renato. Well, the scientists would explain it all. This time, Renato was sure he'd figured out how to use the core safely. See? He'd trusted his gut, and it had worked out. That's what it meant to be a hero. To ignore the naysayers and the odd-makers, and do what you knew was right, and have it turn out to be the right thing. Well, he wasn't worried. Once he got to the observatory, the scientist toads could explain it. Then he could carry the war into the enemy's camp and destroy them all. Oh dear, he was getting a little bloodthirsty, wasn't he? Once you try it, you're hooked. Bernardo had never felt better in his life. Normally, a battle would wear him down and he would need a night's sleep. Now he felt like he could go all night and all day. He felt like people were cheering him on, and he could practically hear their applause as he slew one raven after another. The Imperial fleet was closing in on the rebels, forcing them to come out and fight. Bernardo was itching to bring the fight to the enemy. He had to remind himself not to be too reckless. It was a bit windy up here.
shy. The toads at the observatory measured the stone with their occult devices. I fed it the core of Skyripper, explained Renato. No more feed blood and souls.
But the core is not an unlimited energy source,
said one toad. Another said,
There's a feedback loop, you see, which could overload the stone.
The stone doesn't actually feed on souls, claimed a third.
But on pain of killing another sentient being. If you can truly be at peace with yourself, it would not overload.
This was all very confusing. At peace? Yes, the mountains were peaceful and quiet, but he now had the power to turn the tides. He should report to the Rebellion Council and prepare for the decisive battle.
Renato couldn't make sense of anything the toads said, and listening to them argue made him restless. The Iblis stone had made him a power in his own right. The core had kicked the Iblis stone out of his head by filling it with more power than it could eat. It was time to meet the leadership of the rebellion. It was time to go to the ruins where they had hidden their secret base.
He was ready for anything the ravens could throw at him. His sword felt ready too. It seemed to know what he wanted most. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. That was always a rush. The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it? Hero wall, hero sword, firewall, fire extinguisher.
This was almost fun. Pain of killing another sentient being? What was that toad talking about anyway? He felt no pain, only pleasure as each filthy raven fell by his sword and the stone glowed brighter and brighter. And all the while, those voices were cheering him on, like he was in the arena, winning bout after bout. Leonardo hated gogglers, but it freaked him out to cut them.
See? With enough leverage, you could go anywhere. The long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. Nothing was on fire. So far, so good.
Landed a claw on him.
Renato had been to a dungeon once where all the chests had teeth and eyes. It had been a short visit.
He slew and slew across the ruins and into the labyrinth that hid the secret rebel base. He was surprised not to see any defenders or even any of the council toads. When he reached the council chambers, there were still no toads, only filthy ravens. "Stop him! He's gone mad!" one raven shouted until he had hacked them all down. There was not a single toad anywhere. No doubt they'd all been taken prisoner. So it was up to him to take revenge upon the Imperial fleet.
But where had they taken the council? It couldn't be good that the Empire had not only found the secret rebel base, but killed or captured everyone there. No matter. He was on a roll. He headed full speed towards the Imperial fleet. He would be the fox who took down 100 warships. He charged. The Imperial fleet was huge and deadly, but he was deadlier.
The crowd was cheering him on. He could practically hear it. "Renato, the hero of the rebellion!" You never knew where the road would take you, thought Renato.
Look down, he thought. As he slew his way across the fleet, Renato thought he could hear a small voice whispering in his ear.
"Look at your gauntlet, you idiot," it said. "Oh, for heaven's sake," he thought. "Can't I be alone in my own head? Look at the stone." "I'm busy," he told the voice. "Talk later." "Then it will be too late," cried the voice. "Don't be so bloody thick." "Piss off," he told the voice and kept up his slaying. "Then this is yours," said Renato, but he couldn't hear his enemy's answer. This is quite the view, he thought.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? There was the Emperor. Renato cut down his elite guard. The exalted Toad cowered fearfully. He had sought to evade death and only made death come to him faster. Renato savored the moment. And then, too quick, it was over. He stood over the dead Emperor.
Death to tyranny! He shouted. Go, Haps, go!
Zenobia stepped out of the shadows. You have to stop, she said. You've killed everyone. Our ravens, your rebels. You murdered the whole rebel council. What? Oh, the ravens killed the council. You big idiot. They don't even know what the secret base is. Shouted Lapino, who was with her for some reason. Look at the stone, said Zenobia. It was black as night. Blacker. But I fed it the core, said Renato. It was glowing. Well, who needs a core, he said, and he attacked. Zenobia conjured her best, and Lapino hopped around like a mad rabbit, but he killed them both easily.
I am unstoppable, he orated at the blood-soaked walls. I alone shall be emperor.
The tiny voice inside him screamed, that doesn't even sound like you big fanny. The stone has stolen your mind. But he ignored it. Who listens to voices in their heads anyway? Madmen, that's who.
And just like that, he was alive again. And back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he'd learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it.
The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens?